Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. It was Champions League, it was defeat for the Reds in Eindhoven, but ultimately it doesn't matter because we can still say for the fourth time this week, the Reds are top of every table you care to mention. And we move now into the Champions League group stage draw. We've got fawning to do over Federico Chiesa and James McConnell. We've got other stuff to look at. We've got Bournemouth to think about at the same time. And here to join me as ever is the renowned and the respected David Lynch. And David, being honest, even now, the Eindhoven thing, PSV, is it all just a bit meh onto the next one for you?
Yeah, it just, I think once you saw what the kind of travelling party was going to be, it was clear that it's not going to be Liverpool's best performance or whatever. It's, and we already knew, didn't we? It didn't really matter what kind of happened in this game. I think Arne Slot had signalled a few weeks ago, I thought a couple of weeks ago in his post-Lille press conference that he was going to completely rotate for this one because he made the point then, and I thought it kind of stood out that there's no difference between first and second. So I was really glad to see he took that step, to be honest, and left a lot of the big hitters at home. You're not getting a lot of opportunities to rest players in this season. And you look at, you think about basically every other side who are in the Champions League this season. They've not had the luxury of doing what Liverpool got to do last night. Yeah. So, when that opportunity arises and you've earned it as well by winning 7 out of 7, it was great to see them take it, really, and yeah, in the end you get a kind of mixed performance. I thought a draw probably would have been a fair result from it, really, if I'm being honest. And to say that when you've put out a second string side entirely and left so many big hitters at home the home of the Dutch champions and the way fixture in the Champions League, plus you throw in that PSV have only lost 1 in the last 55 games at home, and that was on penalties as well to Feyenoord. I thought it was a really good effort. So I actually thought kind of, the defeat didn't matter, but I thought it was an awful lot of positives out of it, really. Not just the resting all the players, but everything else as well.
Yeah, two ways about it. And LFC Mads put there, Slot gets a 10 rating. And how good was it having Chiesa playing his first full 90 and McConnell? And I mean, that is where we need to go for this realistically, because if you don't like James McConnell and you don't like Federico Chiesa, you're probably best just turning off for the next 5 minutes, because we say this unashamedly. I mean, I want to sort of talk about them individually. And the James McConnell one, first of all, David, just before we actually talk about him, I'd seen there was a clip that Arne Slot had done, and people were almost using it to say he's definitely not going out on loan. And you think you'll know the one I mean. There is just a little bit more to this clip, people. So I'm just going to play it for you now, just in case it got missed, because don't want this to be misreported at all.
James McConnell. I wouldn't say definitely, but I liked him a lot today. So maybe now the end result of today would be good for him to go somewhere and play. But he was also a player that hasn't played in the last 6 or 7 months, 90 minutes, because he was injured for a while. And he impressed me a lot today.
Nice words from a stern taskmaster. And if you look at his stats there as well, I mean, all round, David, James McConnell was brilliant last night, wasn't he?
Yeah, absolutely superb. And I feel like he's kind of gone under the radar a little bit when he kind of comes in. But I feel like every time I do a kind of post-match review and he's been involved in the game, I have to give him a mention, because he's been absolutely quality. And it's not one of those that you kind of, that's coming from the academy that's rated as an absolute superstar. And he, like I say, he kind of goes under the radar, I think, among supporters. But every time he takes to the pitch, you're kind of like, wow, this kid has absolutely got it. I think back to his kind of cameo in the League Cup final. For me, he wins that game for Liverpool. He is the key sub out of any of them that has the biggest influence. He completes every single pass when he's on the pitch in that game, including in the build-up to the corner that gets the winning goal. At a point in which Liverpool needed fresh legs. So from that moment onwards, I've kind of been like, right, well, let's keep an eye on this kid. And like I say, every time he comes in, he impresses me. I mean, physically, he's not right up there, is he? In terms of, you could do with filling out a little bit, but he's still very young, and all the other elements, that aspect will come, but all the other elements of his game are absolutely there. His brain, his football brain, is unbelievable. Speed of thought, and I'm talking about his physicality, but his ability to win duels and win tackles. is unreal as well. So, he's not kind of gets found lacking in that aspect. He wasn't dribbled past once yesterday, wins 4 out of 4 tackles, all that kind of thing. So his defensive aspect is very, very good for someone who's a little bit slight at the moment. And then, like I say, his use of the ball, some of the quick exchanges, he will take the ball absolutely anywhere. He wins fouls in good areas because he's using his body really well. I just really, really like this kid. And honestly, I think he's come onto the radar as someone who I really do think he might have a future. And I mean, you only have to see what Arne Slot has said about him there is that, further to that, he kind of said, look, he stood out to me in training. Actually, he's looked really good there. But you never know what it's going to be like in an environment like this. And the fact he's kind of proved his point there, going in a Champions League away game and playing like that. As I say, in a really, really tough place to go and against a very physical PSV side, that was something that stood out to me yesterday. I just think it just underlines how much, how big his potential is. So I'm all in on this kid now, and I think he's really, really got a chance of making it at Liverpool.
I was going to ask you, because it's intriguing, because I know people have put up the first part of that Arne Slot quote, and he's definitely not leaving. But he did say there, going to have to speak to Richard Hughes. We'll have to have a think about this. Do you think, because of his slight frame, is it going to be a loan for him? Or do you think now we're going to want to keep this kid around and maybe give him minutes in the cups and games like that?
To be honest, I would be absolutely guessing. So I spoke to kind of James's camp ahead of coming on this podcast, and they still don't know. So there's still the question mark there. So waiting for the kind of green light from the sporting director now in terms of whether he'll be allowed to go or whether they want to keep him around. And for me, I kind of lean towards being a little bit, think about the long term a little bit more and be a bit less, a bit more selfless really in this situation and say, yes, I can imagine minutes for him in the FA Cup when that comes around. But outside of that, Liverpool have got the second leg of the semi-final of the League Cup. He's not going to get minutes there. He's probably not going to get minutes in the final outside of a kind of an injury crisis like Liverpool had last season. So I think the better thing would be, there's clubs from Championship, clubs from League One who are interested in him. I think that would be much better for him to go out and maybe play a bit more football in the second half of this season. So I wouldn't mind seeing him leave, but there's not kind of a definitive answer on that. And if that does happen, it's going to be on the last day of the window. So we just kind of keep our ears to the ground now and find out. But I noticed what, Slot's quote, he was very much kind of joking there. He's not giving a kind of concrete answer on that. So let's see what happens. And James and his camp are kind of waiting for the green light and information on which way that's going to go.
Yeah. Well, whatever happens, this kid looks like he's got an exciting future. He does just keep impressing under the radar. So fingers crossed it continues. And one player who didn't go under the radar, Italian international, showing his class. I mean, every time we see Federico Chiesa, the boy just lives to get a shot off, doesn't he, basically?
Yeah, loved his performance yesterday. I mean, the phrase I use was he's kind of like a dog who'd been let off the leash, particularly in that first 20 minutes or so. He's running around like an absolute madman. And he looked like a player who's been starved of football, who really just wants to get out there and show what he's about and really wants to play for Liverpool and be a Liverpool player. So phenomenal attitude from him, really enjoyed it. And it's not just that as well. It's not just great attitude and the fact he gets 90 minutes. They are both really big positives considering the start he's had to his Liverpool career. But he's involved in the 2 goals massively, isn't he? I mean, wins the penalty with his tenacity and his pace there, which, his pace really stood out to me because you haven't seen an awful lot of him, but he is so quick and quick in mind as well. So does well to win the penalty. And as you say, really good at getting shots off and working the keeper. And then he does that. And of course that gets tipped out to Harvey Elliott to score the second. So really, really enjoyed his performance, and I loved his post-match interviews as well. He seemed seemed really pleased, didn't he, to be able to get on the pitch now. And I think he's put himself in the frame to play more minutes between now and the end of the season. Particularly in the Premier League and in the Champions League going forward. He looks a real option.
I was going to ask you, out of everything we've seen last night and everything we've heard, like you say, his after-match interview was brilliant. Is the biggest thing for you ultimately that Chiesa now looks like a real option? As in, it wouldn't surprise you if one game he was even on the left and Diaz or Gakpo were on the bench or false, whatever it may be.
I wonder whether there's a run for him in that central role, with Jota being injured as he is, and that's a frustration. Maybe there are minutes for him there. I don't think Núñez or Jota have absolutely nailed down that central role, and Chiesa is capable of playing it, and he looks like he could, do a decent job there in terms of linking play. He looks strong enough, he's quick enough. Maybe he could be a really good option there. We'll see, but certainly, before we get to the point of him starting, which I really do hope is coming at some point. But before we get to that, there's definitely got to be minutes for him off the bench. He was influential against Brentford. I think he's shown now with getting 90 minutes under his belt that he can come into these games of high intensity. So I'm really, really hopeful. I'm so loath to use this phrase because I know I get hammered for it, but you know what I'm going to say? He is like a new signing because we haven't seen him at all up to this point. And now he's fit and now he's ready. And it can be like, if Liverpool had signed Chiesa in the January window and we touch wood that he stays fit, that would be considered a huge boost. So to have him in, and if he can stay fit between now and the end of the season, he looks a real option to me. So really excited to see what he can do. And I really enjoyed his performance.
Yeah. 2 real positives last night. There's no 2 ways about it. And aside from the funniest bit, being young Narlo properly jeopardising the future of Bakayoko's future plans, but we won't talk about that one too much, is a few goals let in and different bits. I mean, does it all get lost in analysis, or would you honestly say, because we should ask the question, anything you thought, I didn't really like the look of that, or Arne Slot will pick them up on it last night?
To be honest, no. I mean, I imagine that the manager will pick out little things and he'll speak to those fringe players, but I think you've got to, when you're looking at the bigger picture, you've really got to take the context in, haven't you? Which is that, I know the defenders all kind of at times looked a little bit ragged and it looked a bit all over the place, but you're facing essentially PSV's best team at home. I know they were missing a couple through injury actually, but close to their best team at home. The organisation of a back four that has never played together and has got a left back in at centre half and all these things, and the midfield in front of it hasn't worked together loads. You're going to get disorganisation. It's going to be easier to play through you than it normally would do. So I just don't want to read too much into it. And I have to say as well, I think Liverpool were pretty unlucky to concede 3, really. I mean, you look at the expected goal stats, and particularly that one that gets fired into the roof of the net from the tight angle. That is an unbelievable finish, really. So, I don't think they did too badly at all. And I think, for a fringe side to go out and put that effort in against the Dutch champions, I'm pretty happy with. And like I say, it's never going to be perfect when you change that many. And I've had a few tweets and the usual nonsense kind of, oh, well, this shows our depth isn't as strong as you say it is. But it's like the arrogance to say that is unbelievable to me. And it's so far removed from the reality of football. If you think that Liverpool should be able to completely leave all the best players at home and put out a second string and then go, like I say, to a side who are the champions of Holland. And I know that's not the same level as the Premier League, but Liverpool have not got their best players out, and they are the difference between these leagues. Players like Mo Salah, who doesn't play in the Dutch league, he plays in the Premier League. If you put your entire second string out and a few kids involved as well, it's arrogant to think that you can go there and dominate the game and you're not going to have a few issues in terms of disorganization and then be able to hurt you. And so for that second string to put on a performance like that, where, it was tight, they only got beat 3-2. Like I say, I thought PSV's finishing was really good, and they didn't batter them on unexpected goals or anything like that. I think a draw would have been a fair result in the end. You've got to say that's really, really good. And like I say, I just think some of the analysis, I call it analysis, it's just tweets I'm getting, to be honest, just totally disregarded that fact. And I don't think that's right. And like I say, I don't think we should be reading too much into it, about what it says about Liverpool's strength in depth. For me, it says Liverpool's strength in depth is phenomenal, actually, that they ran them close despite all the factors involved there. And also, when you do make changes and you use your depth, it's usually bringing 1 or 2 of them in from time to time. So that is much easier for them and gives them a better platform. So, I don't think anything to worry about at all, really. And just quickly, actually, I see a comment there just popping up. No replacement for the important players like Salah, Virgil, Gravenberch. I can't read this point one more time without losing my mind, because nobody has replacements for players like that. Okay, your Salah replacement, by the way, is Federico Chiesa, who's a full Italian international who looks absolutely class now. He's over his injuries. you're never going to have a replacement for Virgil van Dijk. You aren't going to have somebody as good as him on the bench. You're going to have Joe Gomez waiting in the wings, Jarell Quansah, and yes, they're not Virgil level, but that is how it works. That's why Man City have lost Rodri and they can't replace him. That's why Bukayo Saka is out for Arsenal and they can't replace him. Your best players who are going to play 50 games a season, you do not have replacements for them. So we need to stop talking about it, like worrying, or what if our best players go down? What if it might happen? But that you cannot mitigate for that in squad building. And there isn't a squad in world football that can mitigate for that. If you lose your best player, you are done for. And that's something you have to sign up for and agree with when you build your squad. Like I say, Man City, billions and billions spent on their squad. They can't cope with their key player out. Arsenal, how much have they spent recently? They can't cope with their key player out. The same would go for Real Madrid. It would go for anybody. So I'm really, really tired of reading that point. And I think it's just sort of really indicative of some of the negativity that people are buying into, the people who are not kind of enjoying this season or taking the most from it, worrying about what ifs that aren't actually happening at the moment and things that no squad in world football could cope with. So that's just a real frustration for me. And yeah, sorry, I'm on my soapbox a little bit, but I've read that comment so many times in the last couple of weeks, and yeah, it's dragging me down, Dave. It's dragging me down.
To be fair, and listen, everyone's got an opinion. And I get people are worried about it, but the first thing we said ahead of this is we didn't want the key three going to Eindhoven, and the key three. And by the way, Ibu, McCallum, most of the team for Bournemouth didn't go to this game, so you can't really ask for too much more. Like you said, we'll see what happens there. And this one. This, honestly, I thought this was the hardest bit of the night, trying to get your head around what the hell is now happening with this Champions League draw. And keep me right if you're reading it the same. The implications are Liverpool finished top, Barcelona second, which means Liverpool will play either one of three French teams, Monaco, Brest and PSG, or Benfica. And then also what will happen is they move forward. If they win that game, they will play the winner of Lille v Villa. Is that how you're taking it from the draw and how it sort of runs through?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just sat here listening to your explanation because I've struggled to get my head around it since yesterday. It seems a little bit convoluted, but yeah, we at least know that is kind of that's the four that Liverpool are going to face, and if they get beyond that, hopefully that means I think that it's Lille or Villa after that. So doesn't look too bad a route, does it, on the surface of things? I mean, I think PSG seemed the biggest hitter out of those four that they could get initially, and even with them, I don't think they should hold too big of fears. They've got great quality players, but I think over two legs, Liverpool would fancy themselves to be the more balanced side and to be able to beat them. So I kind of think a lot to look forward to from that. And again, could be Villa, couldn't it, after that, which is they are, it really would be a big test because they are a top side. But Liverpool are top of everything at the moment, so I don't think they should be kind of fearing anyone really. And in terms of sides they want to avoid in this entire competition, obviously you'd say Barca have had a really strong season in it so far, so that's something. But you won't play them until the end of the competition if you can get there. Real Madrid with their kind of voodoo, you try and avoid them for as long as possible, and maybe even hope that they go out at some point. But aside from that, Liverpool, for good reason, really, are being considered the best team in Europe. So I don't think they should fear anyone, and hopefully this run in the Champions League can continue.
Yeah, it is interesting. People talk about the group of death, but when you put those teams together in the draw and say City, Real, Bayern, Atletico Madrid have got to almost destroy each other to get to the last sort of to the semi-final, we may be in. Yeah, it may look pretty decent on paper. Fingers crossed it plays out that well.
I'd have to say, sorry, just to come in there, Dave, as well, that the Man City getting through, I think, is not the worst thing as well, because obviously their game their games against Real Madrid or Bayern will land, won't they, just before the second leg will land just before Liverpool go to the Etihad. So that, I think that's really, really handy for a squad that's kind of a bit injury stricken and looking a bit stretched and very, very leggy this season. That's no bad thing for Liverpool at all.
Not at all. Yeah, you'd have taken this on paper ahead of last night, so we'll see what it brings. And I mean, off the field, honestly, Slot pretty much shut the window for us, didn't he? He said the other day, literally, that there's nothing planned. We're very happy with the squad January. However, he also said it's important to quote this, people. We are definitely in the process of looking at the summer and definitely making plans for there. Now, I know this sent people into overdrive a little bit and the various things, but it just kind of is what it is, isn't it, David? The January transfer window is not an FSG stooge, as people are saying. Arne Slot is happy with this squad.
Yeah, I mean, I saw someone reply to me yesterday saying, this guy's on the payroll, which I thought was really funny. But it's like, this is the thing, is all this talk, and I know what people will say now. Oh, well, he's just saying that because he has to. It's just, he doesn't have to say it at all to say he's happy with the squad. He doesn't need to say that at all. He can just keep himself to himself around that subject. No one's asking, are you happy with the squad directly? So he didn't need to come out and say that. He genuinely is. There's no aspect to this which is FSG denying him any money or anything like that. He likes what he's got in the squad and he's happy to ride it to the end of the season. It's his first season in charge. He's only added one player. Obviously, Mamardashvili will come after that as well. But I think there will be changes in the summer. I think it's obvious where those positions will be. But I totally get why he's happy with what he's got. I mean, look at the performances so far. Why wouldn't he be? Again, another thing I'm kind of getting a little bit tired of hearing, really, is the idea that, Liverpool collapse at the end of every season. That's total nonsense for me. I mean, they collapsed at the end of last season. No question about that.
Yeah.
But I don't think this has been a common theme over the last few years at all, really. I think it was only last year that's happened. And last year, coincidentally, there was just one of the biggest injury crises I've ever seen in my years covering Liverpool. So they're doing much better in that regard this year. So there's no reason to expect there will be a repeat of that. You've got pretty much two players in every position who are top class. So I totally understand why the managers have that mindset of get to the summer, then I'll get my own men in and make the tweaks. And, we hope that when we get to that summer, it'll be with a couple of trophies on board as well. So this is a really strong squad. And I will continue to repeat, I think it's the strongest in the Premier League. And I think it's right up there in Europe as well. So, I'm not surprised that they're not doing any business in January, and we'll kind of wait to the summer to address a couple of the issues that are there, but that aren't big enough issues to think that they can't get to the end of the season and win things.
Yeah, exactly. And there's plenty of time for us to speculate around summer, but we don't even fully have to wait till summer, because we can have a little talk about it now, because we mentioned this name, Hato, the other day, the Ajax youngster. He was naturally asked at this press conference, wasn't he? And he said he was invited by Ryan Gravenberch, didn't speak to a director, just to clarify any rumours there. Liverpool played well and the atmosphere in the stadium was good. There is no more to say. However, he was then asked in also the Europa Conference about his future. And we said, well, we'll have to see in the summer. I mean, we've talked about this last time. He's not dismissed these rumours, Hato, at all by any means. Would it be that much of a surprise if there is real interest and he has maybe met Slot, various people on the quiet, shall we say?
I kind of take his word for it in terms of him being invited to the game for that reason. I think Liverpool would try and keep it under wraps if they were doing, than having me seen in the stands or whatever, than, kind of do it that publicly. But I don't doubt for a second that he's someone who's on their radar, because, player who's that age, who's playing an awful lot of minutes so far. I think he got in and around the first team when he was the age of 16. So, he's clearly a massive talent. I think Liverpool, they watch all kind of players who fall into that bracket. And he's clearly an outstanding player, and particularly as we know, defence is kind of an area where they'll feel maybe there's some reinforcements needed over the summer in terms of could Joe Gomez go and open up a centre half slot? Left back is obviously an area of concern, and he can play both positions. So I've no doubt whatsoever that he is he's on the radar. But whether that becomes anything, there's a lot of variables involved here, and one of the ones that we don't talk about, it's not about, Liverpool want him, go and get him, but other clubs may offer him maybe more playing time and more guarantees there, and that might be kind of appealing to him. So he's got to all be balanced in, but I've no doubt they're keeping tabs on him and possibly will be in the mix if we were to come on the market. But in terms of whether that will get over the line, it's got to be right for the player, hasn't it, as much as it's right for Liverpool. So we'll see how that shakes out.
Yeah, definitely one to keep an eye on through to the summer. But in the immediate future, how good was it to see Joe Gomez? And I know I saw your tweet and I gave a little punch in the air at home, which was a bit bizarre. But Joe Gomez back in training ahead of even Jota and Jones. But this is big news for us, isn't it, really?
Yeah, really good news. I think, you just did worry about, when obviously Liverpool got 4 quality centre-half options, haven't they, there? But you do worry when one of them goes down that, you may be one injury away from that becoming a little bit difficult when you've got so many games. So really big boost to getting around, because obviously I don't want to see Andy Robertson at centre-half again, if I'm being completely honest. Yeah. So really, really good to have him back. And I do wonder with Joe Gomez as well, might he even come into contention for that left-back spot?
Yeah.
I think the fact that Robertson and Tsimikas were both involved there yesterday kind of gives you a real clue of the fact that, neither man has really nailed it down, have they, as a starting berth. And I think there's a chance maybe Gomez could come into contention there. I wouldn't mind seeing that at some point between now and the end of the season. But, even if that doesn't happen, he's great depth, isn't he, to have all across the back four. Great lad. It doesn't let you down when he comes in. So, really, really good to have him back in the fold.
I suppose as well, ahead of Friday, and we can't be greedy because we have had great fitness and availability this season, but we are kind of waiting for news on Jota, Jones and Nunes now as well, because he was ill last night. So we're hoping for sort of 3 positive updates, aren't we?
Yeah, I imagine with Jota, I mean, it's hard to kind of gauge with Jones. We'll have to kind of see on that one whether, maybe, I think, I kind of be surprised if he's back this side of Bournemouth, but we'll have, just with the way that Slot was talking about it, so we'll see with that. But with Jota, I mean, the manager kind of said that him and Joe Gomez were pretty close with each other in terms of coming back, and he always says, doesn't he, last couple of days of rehab is quite difficult to judge. So I'm not surprised that maybe Joe's just jumped ahead of him there, but maybe there's a chance that we do see Jota in training before the weekend, and that'd be a boost. Even if you can get 10 minutes out of him off the bench in a game like this, it would be really, really helpful for Liverpool. So hopeful we get a decent update, and hopefully with Nunes as well, he has enough time to recover from that illness that made him miss out yesterday, and he can be back, because again, he's another one. Because he's been ill, I don't expect him to start, but maybe he can be handy off the bench and have a big moment like Brentford. We'll have to see. So fingers crossed, because you don't want those injuries kind of piling up, and Liverpool aren't doing too badly, but the more players they can get back, the better.
Yeah, fingers crossed it stays that way. And three or 4 big positive announcements on Friday would go down very well, because let's be honest, this does feel like an absolutely massive game, this one. Liverpool, Bournemouth, another 3 p.m. Saturday game. We shouldn't really undersell it. It feels huge in the context of the season, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I just feel like it could be a bit of a statement if Liverpool go there and win. But one thing I want to say is you want to be a bit wary about kind of building it up too much in your mind how good Bournemouth are. I mean, they're fantastic, and Iraola is doing a phenomenal job there, and they are in particularly good form at the moment. But equally, they've got the same amount of points as Chelsea. So, I don't think we'd be going to Chelsea absolutely scared to death of facing them. I think you'd be confident Liverpool could win. So, you've got to kind of balance that really. And, Liverpool have got to go there and show them some respect, but equally not too much, because, there's a big gap between these sides in the table, and Liverpool, will want to go there and show why that is, because they've got the better finishers, because they're stronger at the back, because they're just a better team really. And Bournemouth, as good a run as they've been on at the moment, you do wonder whether, these players are getting kind of whipped a little bit, aren't they? It's, he hasn't got many changes he can make and rotate. They're absolutely beset by injuries. So, does that lead to some fatigue? And if Liverpool can keep it tight towards the last half hour of the game, are they the ones who will be able to kind of come on strong? You would certainly hope so. So it would feel like a big result if Liverpool could get one. And I don't think a draw would be an absolute disaster. And I still, if they lose, you can see that happening. They're still in an unbelievable position. It's, like I keep saying, it's kind of one of those title races where it's not going to take 90 plus points. So maybe you can stomach losing, but I think Liverpool can go there with every confidence that they can win, particularly as they're going to be fresh. They're going to be, so many players rested, just rip into that game and show Bournemouth what they're all about. So I'm really looking forward to this as a test of this team, and I think it would feel like a big result if they did get the win.
And you're right, there are so many players fresh. Normally we talk about who do we think the lineup. I mean, this team largely picks itself because of who went shopping at Liverpool 1 yesterday, didn't they, rather than did any training, etc. So it's easy to pick that. I suppose the only thing I was going to ask you, left back, because that is hard to pick. Did you think because Andy Robertson went off earlier yesterday, you'd lean towards him?
Yeah, I think that was a bit of a giveaway, really. With both of them starting, he had the option to take either of them off, and the fact it was Robertson maybe says something there. So I think he's going to be the one who gets the nod. He still does seem to be, even though it's been a kind of direct competition at times this season, It still seems to me that when the big games come around, or the ones he views as the most important, he kind of wants to lean on Robertson and sees him as slightly ahead. Difficult game upcoming for Robertson there, because Bournemouth is so good on the wings and they've got so much pace and strength there. So he's going to have to be at his absolute best, which we haven't seen quite enough this season, but we have seen it a few times. So I really, really hope he can be at his best. But I do expect he's going to be the one who starts at left back.
Yeah, it could be a tough game. Kluivert's in a sensational form. Semenyo's red hot at the moment. So, the full-backs are going to have to be on it. It is Saturday, 3:00. We will see what it brings, but we should go there confident and hopeful at the same time. And the final thing that we always have a quick chat about is the wider football. I mean, we've talked about City and the nightmare they've got with their draws. Probably the transfer window's the most interesting thing to talk about. We actually got a bit of excitement, probably not what Aston Villa fans will call it last night, as they got 2 bids for both their strikers, realistically. The one I wanted to ask you about, though, was Duran. I mean, it looks sewn up that he's heading to Saudi, 77 million euros plus add-ons, etc. Is there an element of sadness in this for you that Duran has done really well, scored some blockbusters in the top Premier League, done well in the Champions League, and at 21 he's heading to Saudi? People may see it differently, but is there an element of sadness in that for you?
Yeah, I just don't really know why he would do it when he's come to the Premier League, made a big bang, and there are Premier League sides who are interested in him to keep him here. He could be a big player and play in the Champions League, and he kind of just wants to go and kind of earn the money instead, because and that's not disrespecting the Saudi League or whatever, but let's be honest, in terms of the level of competitiveness there and the ability to test yourself, that's just not there. So the only appealing factor is the money. So yeah, it is a bit strange and a bit sad, really, and it's a blow for Villa as well, because he's been a great backup for Ollie Watkins there, and obviously Watkins himself might be on the way. So it's a really strange one, particularly with the sides who are interested in him. He didn't need to go to Saudi, but it seems like he is, and maybe he's thinking I'll go there for a couple of years and come back to Europe. But I do find that a little bit strange, I'll be honest.
Yeah, and we'll see. And probably in a good way, it rules out Ollie Watkins to Arsenal, then getting that striker reinforcement especially. But we will have to see what happens before.
That is a fascinating one, by the way, Ollie Watkins and Arsenal, because I think he's a great player. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he scored a lot of goals in recent years, but it's kind of an odd one to me in terms of, I think obviously age-wise, he's probably not going to get better after the next couple of years or so. He's probably going to stay at this level. So it's very much kind of win now signing from Arsenal. And, I think they're going to struggle to win the Premier League this season because they're so far behind. They've no Saka, and then, you've probably got to win next season to justify that signing, because he prevents you then from signing any other centre forward, really. So it's an interesting one. If they, maybe they would, surely they won't get it over the line if Duran is going, but it's a really kind of interesting one, that. And I'm not sure it's a sign I'd be absolutely overjoyed about as an Arsenal fan, because I do feel it is quite a short-term signing, but we'll see. I could be completely wrong about that. I often am.
It does seem a weird pivot, though. Sesko was the one they were linked with, a young 21-year-old talent, to then pivot to a nearly 30-year-old striker for 60 million. There's probably some Villa fans thinking maybe he might be the one to sell, but it doesn't really look like they get a choice either way. So we'll have to see what develops with that one. But there we are, ladies and gents. Thursday, yes, we got defeated. Did it matter? Not really. Were there positives? Well, if you know the names of James McConnell and Federico Chiesa, they were 2 big ones to take as we head into Bournemouth. And a huge, but not too massive game. So we'll see what Saturday at 3:00 brings. All it leaves me to say as ever is, David, for the time, the insight, and for the small rants in between, it is much appreciated.
Thanks for having me. More rants next week, I'm sure.
Good stuff. And ladies and gents, that was another Media Matters from Anfield Index.